corruption is killing you. This one is definitely personal for me as well. So I asked the events team if it was okay if I could host it. And of course, they're awesome. And they were like, hell yeah, go for it. And I knew exactly who to reach out to talk about these things, people that I know personally about affected by these issues, and also are people I am proud to call friends because they're genuinely just effing awesome people. So I'm pretty excited about this panel. It was excited even like reaching out to these folks to do this and like talking about this panel. So I'm pretty pumped. As terrible as a topic it is, it's good to be able to talk about it with awesome people who are really trying to make a difference. So I will stop talking and I'm going to just go down the list here and I'm going to ask each one of you to just introduce yourself, your name, if you're with an organization, your role, or if you're doing something in the community, what your role there is. And definitely feel free to take your time to talk about what part of this is personal to you, whether it's the big pharma or it's the big agra, or the opioid crisis in particular. The whole point of this is really to start making heartful connections to the pain that we feel as human beings to the impact of corruption. It's urgent. I know it takes time to talk about these things, but I feel like America needs a good kick in the ass to realize how important this is. So with your help, hopefully we get that Buddha kicking. So let's kick it to Joelle. You want to go first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Joelle Craft, she, her pronouns. I am with Washington Can, and I'm also with Wolfpack. Washington Can is a huge, one of the largest grassroots organizations in Washington State, and they were hugely involved in the ACA. And they work on all different kinds of things. And of course, I'm involved with Wolfpack because, as we know, money is the root of everything. And although, and the reason I'm on this panel, one of the ways that I got involved with Washington Can was because I ended up being the face of the Charity Care campaign against Swedish Providence back in 2008 or 9, I believe it was, when they were ripping off people. And I was one of those people and went bankrupt before you could go medically bankrupt. And so that right there was, kind of that was getting in the activism. And then also because of my health, medications are a big thing that cost a lot of money. And so this is obviously important on that end. And plus on my other end, because I'm going to keep this pretty short, I'm allergic to like everything food wise in this country. I am vegan and I am stateswide gluten free because of the chemicals, although I can eat bread and cheese in other countries. So that's a lot that has to do with our big pharma and agriculture, because all of that wraps into my health, which wraps into bills, which wraps into the last panel, which was housing. And so we know this whole intersectionality. So I'm really excited to be here today. And so, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's kick it to Kimmie.
Hey, y'all. I am Kimmie Ishmael. I am from Kentucky. I currently reside in Lexington, Kentucky, but I grew up in Appalachia, Eastern Kentucky, and so grew up there, moved to Central Kentucky, but been here my whole life. Love it here. But I am currently the campaign policy coordinator at a nonprofit organization called Community Farm Alliance. We focus on the whole farmer, I like to say. We do food incentive programs, so direct farm impact, so help people on feeding, like SNAP, seniors, WIC, those kinds, connecting those consumers to our farmers, but also helping farmers navigate how to even register a farm. How do you get a farm number? How do you apply for a USDA grant? How do you process meat? Where do you send that to? We range all kinds of issues. But I grew up on a farm. I'm a generational farmer, at least 4-year generation farmer. I grew up doing dairy, and then that industry died out. Then we switched to tobacco. That industry died out, and then we ended up doing beef cattle and leasing part of our farm. And my dad went and worked at a factory. So that's agriculture is really hard. The average farmer in Kentucky makes $20,000 a year, so it's not even a supplemental income. So that means a lot to me. But also the opioid crisis means a lot to me. My oldest brother passed away in 2016 after he had been fighting addiction since I was in 7th grade. So I am 31 now, and he passed away in 2016. So many years he dealt with that and passed away, unfortunately, to heroin overdose that was laced with fentanyl. So that's very important to me. And all of these issues, especially they were just talking about housing, intersex, Appalachia is really suffering, and Kentuckians as well. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about all these impacts today.
Appreciate you. So sorry for your loss. Let's go with Jodi.
Hey y'all, how you doing? Jodi Newell, she, her. I am a New Hampshire State Representative. I was a Wolfpack volunteer for a very long time, national coordinator on the National Council. I was just one of those people who just stepped up and said, "Yep, what can I do?" I still am. It's a thing. No boundaries. Anyway, so I think, really why I'm part of this conversation, the one thing that really kind of lit a fire under my butt and got me looking deeper into politics in the first place before any of the activism, before anything, right, was losing my children's father, my fiance at the time, Corey Ambler. And he was, he passed. Our oldest was a year old. He's about 13 months. And our youngest was born 2.5 weeks later. So now those same children are 14 and 15 years old, fast approaching 15 and 16. And the numbers are still rising. The overdose deaths are still rising. So knowing personally myself, the impact of that, not only on myself, but on my children, and being scared as hell that my children now 15 years later, we're looking at the same situation that now my children have to deal with. About, I would say, what was it, 9 or 10 years ago, that was when I really started getting active and things like that. I found Wolfpack because that was kind of what fuels the fire, right? So, we have all of these things. This is how I like to put it. And anybody who knows me and has heard me speak from the Wolfpack, y'all, have probably heard this kind of way of going about it, is that I constantly feel like we're running around, we're putting out fires, putting out fires, putting out fires, putting out fires. But at the end of the day, what fuels all of these fires is the corrupting influence of money in politics. And so really that was kind of, okay, I have a limited amount of time. I'm a single mom. What can I actually do that's going to be helpful and useful and, really make a difference with this limited amount of time that I have? And that was Wolfpack, in working on money in politics. And now I'm very happy to be in a position where I can actually try and make moves kind of from the other end of it. Wolfpack taught me how to do the testimony and, how to strategize and organize a committee hearing. Now I am on the committees and hearing these things and thinking like, I know how all of this works because Wolfpack taught me. This is what we learned. So it's really nice. I'm able to do it from a different way. And I'm just, I'm a sponge, show me what I can do. And in the same way, show me how I can be helpful. So right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking for opportunities to make a difference in whatever possible way I can, in whatever capacity I'm in. And this just happens to be the one I'm in now. So thanks for having me.
I appreciate y'all. I skipped a step because honestly, I kind of needed a minute. But I appreciate y'all. I'll introduce myself super quick. But my name is Josh Aciz. I'm National Director here at Wolfpack. I didn't really get involved for any particular, really hardcore issue like this. I got more like kitchen table in the very beginning, just working in corporate America, feeling like a number on a spreadsheet instead of a human being. I remember growing up and my mom and dad getting excited for Christmas dinners, and remember my mom going to get a dress tailored and my dad getting his suit and them getting a Christmas bonus. And I was having I just had this whole idea of what the workplace was like. And when I grew up, I was like, this is nothing like any of that. Like, it's like a dumpster fire. Like, people are above you who don't know what they're doing. They're yelling at each other. It's like a constant chain of everybody yelling, like, you're not doing your job, you're not doing your job. And yeah, it didn't take long for me when I started getting involved in politics just to connect the dots and be like, wait, America is kind of like my work, you know, like, what is the difference? And it's money. Like, it's all it is. It's people's lifestyles, their comfort of living. And so I got in it for that. But I will say, one of the things that continues to drive me, because it's a hard and long fight, is I have lost 3 family members to the opioid crisis. I lost my cousin Mike in 2012, and I lost my nephew and my niece only a few years ago. None of them even got to the age of 30. So, but yeah, so if anybody has lost anybody, definitely feel free to put that in the chat. And I need a minute, so let's just take a moment of silence for everybody that we've lost to these things. I asked to do these things. I know I'm going to get emotional. Appreciate everybody. I will do my best to reel it in, I promise. All right, so we will keep it moving in this discussion for sure. So I appreciate everybody taking a moment to introduce yourself. I know this conversation is heavy, but it's needed, man. We don't talk about this stuff enough. So I appreciate all of you. Yeah, so we dabbled in this a little bit, but I would like to take the heart of this conversation, honestly, to talk about as much intersections and connections as we possibly can here. I know everybody here has their personal impacts here. We're all connected by it, but a lot of the work you do, you learn so much more on how bad it is. Like, you already know how bad it is, and then when you like start fixing it, you start realizing how much more bad it is, right? So to really paint the picture to folks and make all these connections, yeah, let's just kind of go around the room. And does anybody want to start off with any particular area and just kind of dive in? Don't be shy.
Okay, I'll go first. I was waiting. I'm that person that always steps up real fast, so I'm trying that step up, step back thing. And maybe that's all of us, so this will be funny if it is. One of the things that I know, because I've been involved in activism since I was a little kid, I got involved actually because of the military and my military family. And but one of the things that you see, especially when it comes into healthcare and with big pharma, is that if you look at, there are only 2 countries in the entire world that allow pharmaceutical advertising. And so if you cut their pharmaceutical advertising and didn't let them advertise their drugs, that would all go into the actual healthcare and go into reducing our prices. The other thing is that, you know, you've got them, literally we're charged the most in the entire world for our drugs. And it took us forever to get the Medicare negotiation. And although they're so excited, it's only 10 drugs. Like, there's not more than 10 drugs. And the problem is that this keeps this cycle of not having the healthcare that you need, and getting the healthcare that is so for profit. It's this huge cycle because like me, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 16. I was the youngest in Washington State at the time, and I had never even heard of it back then. I'm now almost 46, so it's been 30 years. And the problem is I was fast-tracked on disability. And so I make $14,000 a year. So when you said the $20,000 a year, that's why I went, oh yeah, you can't live off of that at all, anywhere. Doesn't matter. But I still got to pay my medications. I still got to pay for stuff. And then you're also in hospitals with chronic illnesses, and this is where we get into the opioid crisis. Every time I go into a hospital when I'm having an MS flare-up or something, because of the way that we have treated people, and because of the way that the people who were pumped out the opioids. And then we're also on the back end of also owning the opioid, the drug rehab centers, because that's in the court cases, is that they actually owned both. So of course they were pumping out more drugs so that they could get more people in the rehab centers because they're making double the money. And this also affects everyone. So whether you are personally affected by someone who passed, I have a friend whose mother's, who has a stepchild, had died. And so it's not very close to me as with the three of you, which, you know, we're all sitting here very sorry for your losses. And it's the pure greed. It's that they're continuing to choose, well, we need the money more than we care about your health. I have a medication that I have to take every 6 weeks that in January, it costs $16,000 every 6 weeks. And by March, they bumped it up to 20,000. I'm like, what happened in 4 months? That drug did not change. There was not better research. It's been exactly the same since I started it in 2020. And then now it's at 22,000. And we're only in September. That means in this whole year, they keep just raising the prices. Why? Because they can, and because our politicians are bought off, which is why they're making the money. Because if you look in every single organization and corporation, big pharma, who did they pay off? My senator alone, between 2016 and 2020, I believe, she had taken over $800,000 from the pharmaceutical. And then she kept, and she's like, well, I can't get them to negotiate drug prices. She's Patty Murray. She's the head of the healthcare board. She's Biden's second in command, and she can't get, she told us, she literally to our face told us she couldn't get a press conference. I mean, they just flat out lie because they're so corrupt because of the money. And what happens is there's this trickle down effect, because you have these people who are not getting the health care they need. They're not getting the stuff that they could get on a daily basis, that regular doctor that they get to go to, the healthcare team that they need, all of that. And to be able to have that therapist and to be able to have those things and to get the medications that they need. And if they have to have, you know, the rest of it, well, that's with the therapist and all this stuff. And there's at least a healthcare team, so they have a chance. But we in this country are like, the only people who want to have a chance are the ones who have money. And so everybody else is thrown away. And this is why so many people turn to the streets for drugs, because how else do you cope with pain? I have literally said that there was a point when I was houseless, and everybody knows that if I literally ended up on the street one night, I would be dead because of my health. And if I was lucky to have been able to couch surf, if I couldn't take the medications that I take, I can't have this conversation with you. I can't get out of bed. Those medications that I take, it's like it's a meal. We joke. There's a lot of vitamins and stuff, but they're very expensive and they make so much money off of me. But if I was houseless, which is one emergency away, that's it. I'm not taking that. Where am I going to go? First thing I'm going to go to is heroin, because that's going to solve my problem. And I can get that for cheaper. And I have to risk the aspect of fentanyl in it. And that's what, you do to survive, because they don't understand that healthcare is a human right. And if we're not taking care of people at the base of it, then we wonder why there's all these problems. People who are not having issues in one way, physically, mentally, or emotionally, don't just go and try drugs and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm addicted forever. It doesn't work that way. That's not even how addictive behavior works. There has to be more to it. So
I appreciate you getting the conversation going. As the whole time you're talking, all I can think to myself is like, man, there's so much money in the system, but it's just morally bankrupt. Like, they could use it for the right reasons, right? We talked about earlier the military industrial complex, the military budget. Think about how much that could go to mental health and helping with a lot of these issues that we're talking about. So yeah, absolutely. Kimmie, Jodi, one of you guys want to jump in? Kimmie?
I was just gonna talk to the ag side of that aspect, I guess. So actually farmers have like one of the highest suicide rates. Um my organization got started actually in 1985 as a suicide hotline for farmers during the farm crisis in the 80s. It was a time where farms were like getting repossessed by the banks, and a lot of times farmers would resort to committing suicides so they could leave their families, their farms. That was like one of the only loopholes out of say keeping the farm in the family. And we all know land is generational wealth. So without that, they wouldn't have anything. So um and a lot of times your whole entire livelihood depends on the weather. So climate change is deeply impacting our farms right now and our farmers. So you're one flood away from literally not being able to survive the winter. And then you the reporting is so hard here in Kentucky for SNAP and WIC that farmers it's so hard if you're a seasonal worker or some sort of, if your income is seasonal, it is extremely hard to get SNAP and continue with SNAP, especially throughout your growing season and things like that. So because you're making more money during your growing season, but you're not going to make that much all year round. So yeah, the mental health aspect and just health care in general, you know, we need we need universal health care. I mean, it's just obvious.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback real quick. I think it's amazing to me. This is kind of like the big realization and the thing that is happening below the surface. And you don't want to be like conspiratorial or anything like that. And like what, but none of these things make sense. You know, this certainly isn't focused on the individual. We are certainly not designing a program that is based on how do we make people well and secure. And, you know, all of these things we talk about, you know, it's the classic Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is the base level of what we need for security as human beings to be able to move on up the pyramid or whatever. And we can't even make sure that we have that. I mean, how does that make sense? If we are successful as a society, we should not be having these problems. We know how to solve them. So at the end of the day, you're sitting here thinking, well, how does this make sense? Now, I don't like to just say like, oh, people are nefarious, you know, Mr. Burns style, you know, with the mustache, you know, behind the scenes or anything like that. You know, people throw around a lot of sinister words. I think that it is human nature. Things like reciprocity, you know, I mean, these things that this is the art of persuasion. This is human nature. We can take human nature and we can design a society or a system that says, hey, these are the ways that human nature can be exploited for bad ends. These are the ways that we can mitigate these factors and our tendency to go off in these directions. We know humans, we know how to do this, and yet we're not. So you get to the end of this, and here's what I think is really, really clarifying. You know, I mean, the first time I stood up at the Wolfpack Warrior Workshop and started talking about this, I'm talking about how Big Pharma was the largest campaign contributor the year before by far. Well, okay, you can say that. That's a connection. But you know what we have now? Now we have these settlements, these lawsuits that are literally clarifying exactly all the ways that this was absolutely intentional, that every entity, it's not just Purdue Pharma, it's not just the Sackler family, okay? It is a variety of consultant groups, of distributors, manufacturers, pill mills, all of these, I mean, doctors, everybody, all along the way. And we know exactly how this happened intentionally with gross neglect and intent and to the extent of the harm that it did today. You know what Corey and I started out doing? OxyContin. That was why, because we had a friend, we thought, oh, we'll use this recreationally. And, you know, and this is fun. This is an experience enhancer. You know, this is this is in 2006, 2007. I mean, I think at some point I may have heard that name, like OxyContin, like a brand in somewhere out in the universe, but it was not something to me that, at least for another couple of years, it wasn't something that I was like, oh, this is really bad. People are dying, you know? It was a real shock to the system. But I think that it's really clarifying to have these settlements coming down, because now we know that it went before a court of law, that it has been proven in a court of law. It has been demonstrated. It is not us just saying, why is this happening?
Yeah.
This is really crazy. It's been very clearly shown. And I think that yeah, that's really clarifying as far as why these things are happening and why they don't add up. They add up for some people, just not us.
Yeah, that's well said. I started watching the Painkillers, I think, on Netflix. I got in like the 3 episodes. I had to take a break because I was just like so infuriated. Like I know it's also a dramatization, but like still like it could show your blood boiling for sure. I want to stay on that topic actually. Like more specifically, you were talking about connections, right? And what I see happening a lot in the world today is Americans are making connections, right? But not completely because these things don't get talked about as deeply as they need to. So I see the bad guys coming in and trying to finish making these connections, but to the wrong stuff, right? And then we find ourselves in a situation where we all fundamentally agree the system's corrupted and screwed and we're not really getting what we want out of it, right? But then we're fighting with each other about everything else, right? And it's by design. So let's just like try to get into the weeds, honestly, as much as we can. I know we're like kind of on the spot here, but yeah, are there anything else that you guys can think of in your line of work when it comes to opioid crisis or farming, big agri, the healthcare industry, or MS, where you can see maybe something that's not so clear to somebody else, but is infuriating, hurts people, and it's all because we either have an unresponsive government, greed, and or corruption, which, for just being honest, those are kind of all the same thing, just different words in today's politics, unfortunately. Yeah, go ahead.
So, real quick, Coca-Cola spent over $350,000 against our GMO labeling campaign. Just to label, not to do anything, just to label. And they spent that much money in all this advertising about how it was going to ruin everything and it was going to, do all this damage and all this food was going to come off the shelves and all this propaganda. They use so much money to advertise and do all this stuff and shove all this lies and propaganda into people's faces that it makes it really hard when you've spent all this time on the ground and then you're fighting against that kind of stuff. So that's, and they're lobbying. They have full-time lobbyists down in the state capitals and in the federal capital. Every single company has not just one, but a team. And they do that because that's how they want to get, that's how they get their products in the stadiums. That's how they get their particular tax breaks. That's what you look at. Coca-Cola was a huge donor in all the political campaigns and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, you have to really look at, Anheuser-Busch and all these kind of other big, where is their money going? What campaigns are they getting involved in and who are they? Who are they particularly, putting money into? A lot of them put them into both sides, but then if you look at which ones they're doing, it's like, oh, okay, they're doing this one, the very corporatist ones on each side. And then you see the triple effect of how it affects us with our food prices, which then makes it even harder for farmers who are getting paid nothing. And then they're trying to eat too. But yet if they go to the grocery store for their basics that they can't grow on their farm, because you can't grow everything on your farm, we don't have that anymore. It's not a way to survive. You can't live off it. Anybody, we now finally have places like Food and Water Watch that got a new CEO. I think she's the new lead. I might have her title wrong or their title wrong, but they went through it and they're like, no, we're done doing what the big donors tell us to do because it's not getting to the people that need it. We talked to the mutual aid people and none of the houseless people are getting enough food. These food banks aren't even getting it all. And if we look at grocery store after grocery store, what do? They throw pallets and pallets of good food away in dumpsters. People raid the dumpsters all the time. Oh, but some places, a lot of places, they make that illegal. They make just surviving and eating illegal. But then how are we supposed to eat? You know, and then the campaigns that whoever puts the most money, you'll find that they're what they want. If they want chemicals, their chemical to be okay. Agent Orange, which was done by Monsanto. You know, Monsanto was running our food for a long time, and then they changed their name. And so now they're kind of still running it, but they're under different names. And so it's harder to find them, but they still have the influence, and they're still the ones that put chemicals in our food so that people like me can't be healthy in the United States. I go to other countries and all of a sudden I can do so much more. My body's like, oh, finally food. And trust me, I eat a lot of bread, a lot of cheese, and a lot of stuff, and I'm great. But I take a piece of cheese here, and I'm already, even the organics, even on the farms, because it's in our soil, it's in everything. And it's not fair to the farmers because they're just trying to create food so we can eat, all of us. And yet we don't even treat them well. And then then you get into the immigration aspects of it, where, you know, a lot of people who are immigrants are, you know, coming in and working on the farms, but then, you know, if you're down south, you know, they're making all these racist policies and immigrations, and look what happened in Florida, where they lost all their immigration workers and all of the Latinx of descent workers. They just all went on strike, construction, farm, everything, crops done, because the people are done being treated this way. And so it's one of these things that, you know, that's also a part of the stuff that we have to do. And I'm kind of rambling, so I'm going to stop because I don't want to take up too much time.
No, that was great. We have an hour, so you are totally fine. We baked this conversation to. I was saying earlier we want to do longer ones in the future on like one issue and really dive in it. But this was like us getting our feet wet, so we went with 2 hours to get a feel with it. But I am so into the 3-4 hour Joe Rogan one-on-one, just literally getting into as much as you possibly can on this stuff. I think is critical because yeah, I'm just getting frustrated with so many people getting stuff like half right, and then the other half is like anger and yelling at each other. And yeah, I know it's a simple-minded way of how I look at it, but I don't think it's that. I don't think the people who are corrupting the system are that smart. I guess I think we give them too much credit sometimes, and what they do is really simple. You know, they've done this for probably thousands of years in different varieties, right? It's just looks different today because we have social media and news organizations, you know. But I'm sure they used to do it with pamphlets back in the day in the town square. I'm sure they've been using their bag of tricks for a very, very long time. And yeah, I definitely appreciate y'all continuing to dive into this and have this conversation. Does anybody else want to jump in and keep it going?
Yeah, I'll just throw in a little something because I think, you know, when we talk about, I mean, essentially, you know, blaming the individual, right? Putting all of the responsibility on the individual. Although we have created this system and people exist in, you know, in a system that, you know, we set the conditions for people. So, you know, we do have societal responsibility for that. But the idea of putting the onus on the individual is very much tied up. I'm sure that you guys are aware, and it's starting to change over time, bit by bit by bit, but the stigma around it, you know, and vilifying and dehumanizing, honestly, dehumanizing people, allowing for people to be treated in ways that that you don't treat a human being, because now you have labeled them, and I hate this word, but a junkie, or, you know, I mean, these words that we use to refer to people as essentially less than human, you know, and then what flows from that. You know, Corey is facing 15 years mandatory minimum in jail. 15 years. Like, I mean, just for possession, what does that do to a human being to be facing that, you know, with a 1-year-old and another one on the way? And then we say, oh, get better now. Yeah, right. Anyway, the idea that we are vilifying and putting the blame on individuals who are in this situation. When we come to the holistic matter of it, these conditions, it's the housing is part of that. The healthcare is part of that. The food we eat is part of that. when we talk about farmers, man, I'm going to pass it off to you, Kimmie. But honestly, the idea of talking about farmers and using them, the way that they get used in so many ways, and then they also get mistreated. You know what I mean? Tokenizing and putting people out there as like, we care about the farmers, and then they throw them right under the bus.
Just like our veterans.
Yep,
Just like
absolutely.
the conversation we had earlier, right? So there's a pattern here. Like this is literally why I got involved because the spreadsheet shit, man. Like people think we're like cogs in a machine, like you're reading a manual, and like we're humans. Like we've lost people, like you've lost a pet, and you got had a bad day, you stubbed your toe, like you got issues going on. Like we're all human, we all got shit going on, and I just feel like that just that heart is taken out of these conversations just too much. So yeah, Kimmie, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so just kind of reflecting on like my work and like what I do and how this where I see the big money and everything. So with my job, I'm currently, it is a dirty word. I'm seeing it in the chat. I am a
We'll get to it. There's already questions,
I
Kimmie.
am a
We'll get
lobbyist.
to it. I am too, so we'll get to it. Or I have.
So, it feels gross and icky when you
It
are
does,
like a
but we'll get to it.
registered lobbyist and like you get paid to actually lobby for things. Um, but in my current role, so I focus, like I have always mainly strictly been just state policy, but this last year I've really dived into federal policy and I'm running a campaign right now for the Farm Bill. So if you don't know what the Farm Bill is, it is literally one of the most important pieces of federal legislation that we can have, and literally nobody knows it exists, nobody knows it's important. It has to be renewed every 5 years, and it houses SNAP. That's what people know as food stamps. So I mean, if it doesn't get renewed or extended, like, we're gonna have some major problems. And then we were facing government shutdown here. And I've been in DC every single month since December, like lobbying on farm bill issues for our members. And I've taken farmers to DC to talk to congressmen, but like it is legitimate that first of all, they're staff people, they don't ever know anything. Like it's you can tell who what organizations that you're working with. You can tell, okay, I can get, if I need to meet, Representative Stabenow, she's the chair of the ad committee, so she's obviously important. I wanted to get a meeting with her, and I just so happen to know this one organization in DC who is really nice with her, so he gets in. But like it's really hard to reach out if you're just a regular person and don't know anybody. So like it's been a really crazy journey in developing relationships, and also the differences between freshman congressmen and seasoned congressmen. And that goes with legislators as well. Like our one freshman Congressman McGarvey in Kentucky, he's he's great. We talk to him all the time one on one. I've only got to meet James Comer a few times. I've met with Massey. I've got to meet with everyone in person except for McConnell and Rand Paul. So they always make you meet with their staff. So but yeah, the Farm Bill, it houses so many things. Crop insurance, people don't understand the corruption that comes with crop insurance and how much we subsidize commodity crops like soybean and corn and things like that. And we do not incentivize diversified crops like farmers having, broccoli, corn, and squash and multiple different crops. We do not make it easy for them to do that. So, yeah, I could go on and on, but Farm Bill really is something that could be looked at for something that really houses a lot of things that we are probably going to talk about today. Yes, it is true. Farmers do not get paid to grow crops unless you're a part of like a government program of some sort that, and then you are entered into getting some sort of stipend or incentive from that. But yeah, you grow your own crops and then but the biggest farms get subsidized, of course. So,
Story as old as time.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, and look who owns those farms.
yeah,
And their connections to the politicians and what kind of money they donate, and that's why they keep getting, their stuff. It's all it all comes, and it's just this big trickle effect where, going down to the farmers who are literally creating the food that we eat so we can survive. And they're just like, we don't need you. It's like, yeah, we do. Kind of do. I don't want to just eat corn. We can't live off of just corn, peeps.
it's
yeah,
like
or corn. What is the corn fructose syrup? Whatever the hell that crap is. Like,
high fructose corn
yeah,
syrup.
there you go. Like, I've been going down the internet rabbit hole of videos of like comparing American food to other countries, and if that shit don't get you angry, I don't know what does. Because they compare like cream of wheats in Europe, and it has like 4 organic ingredients, and then the one in America has like 15, and it's like phosphate number 2 and red dye 3. It's like, what is all this? And well, I haven't been out of the country too much, but my wife travels quite a bit for work for Costa Rica, and I was lucky enough to join her recently on just like a long kind of work trip. And yeah, it was so weird. I was dying to try like the fast food, just see if it was different. Different, definitely was. And they even advertise everything there instead of like Coca-Cola is Coke Zero. Everything's in glass bottles. Actually, just recently they banned plastic, like everywhere basically. So everything's in glass. And yeah, it's just amazing what happens when you eliminate corruption and it's people trying to just do good by their land and their people. You put them first. And I'm sure there are plenty of issues in other countries. I'm sure there are plenty of issues in Costa Rica, but now that I do this kind of work and I see organizing everywhere, I'm constantly paying attention to this stuff unknowingly, like on vacation, asking friends, like, "Hey, what's the politics in Costa Rica? Like, let's talk about it." And so they're dealing with the same stuff over there for sure. And many of us have gone through this multiple times, but even the organizing for power training with Jane McAlevey, it's every year. I think it's in like March. They do 6 weeks of training on Tuesdays. There's 2 classes. You get a certificate at the end, which is really cool. But I remember the first time I went on it, there was like thousands of people on the call, and it was from all around the world. And then you hear them fighting labor in Europe, and you hear them fighting labor in Africa and Ireland, and you're like, man, the struggle is everywhere. But the thing that I really take solace in is a lot of the times growing up, we're all like living the idea of America being the greatest country, and I still think that to be the case. But like, you can't not be the greatest and say you're the greatest. Like, we have to earn it. And other countries have looked at it like this for a very, very long time. And I would like to be the beacon of greatness and aspiration, but unfortunately, right now we are not. I go to other countries and I ask them about politics in Costa Rica. You know what happens when we start talking about politics in America? They start laughing, and it's like somewhat embarrassing to talk about American politics to friends in other countries. So, not ashamed of this country at all. I think all what we're doing here is literally the bravest and most patriotic thing you can do is try to save your country. Like, I know no one wants to be here if we're just going to keep it real. Like, I love you guys, but it's Saturday at 6 o'clock. My wife's upstairs watching TV, could be chilling, but we got to do this because who the hell else is going to, right? So we need more folks in the fight for sure. More Kimmies, more Joels, no more Jodis. If we're going to be able to pull this bad boy off. So sign up if you can. And yeah, we're going to keep this conversation going. We got 45 minutes, and then we're going to leave the remaining of it for questions. So I already see people putting questions in the chat. Definitely keep them coming, so that way we can make sure to answer any questions you have about any of these topics or anything you want to hear from the guests here today at all. So we're going to pivot a little bit, not a ton. It gets heavy talking about this stuff. I know I jokingly said earlier, when the more and more you do the work, the more and more you realize how bad it is, which can definitely be deflating and sometimes also motivating, especially when we have these conversations, for sure. But yeah, let's talk about changing shit, you know? That's what we're all here about, right? We want to talk about these issues, we want to give them the voice, we want to empower folks and lift voices up. At the end of the day, we want to win, right? We want to change shit. So I really want to dive into any of your experiences here in your current roles, past roles, getting legislation to address these issues, working in these issues, any groups that you work with or know of that are working in these issues to organize. Maybe they haven't had the big win yet, but you know, they're building a groundswell for like an eventual win. And yeah, I know I want to hear about it. So anybody want to kick us off?
Can I just start off with a little bitty
Yeah, go for it.
Right, because now it's interesting starting out with Wolfpack, and I mean, what at the Warrior Workshops we did these whole, you know, learning how to set up, you know, do your testimony and blah 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 and all these kind of things, and y'all have it right. Okay, I'm just saying that people are not as organized as you are at all. But anyway, it's funny because now I'm like, oh, am I like OCD? Because now I have like the Wolfpack frame.
Hey, the struggle is real. Just gonna keep it honest. It's not easy organizing a committee here.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this, right? One of the things that, you know, you said in the call earlier today, and I know focused on, you know, of course, when you're planning out, okay, people are going to testify in committee. Well, we're going to make sure that all of the bases are covered, right? Each point, the main points that we want to make sure that we cover, we're responding to people's concerns and things like that. And so we design our testimony, not only individual testimony, but as a collective, so that all of our testimony kind of focuses on, you know, covers all of the bases. I remember, I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before, talking about, you know, doing a, you know, half hour or whatever, Ronnie and I actually, about, you know, talking about how you connect with people, right? The oxytocin. I remember this, right? Ronnie knows. But anyway, you know, you're talking about how do you connect with people? Because like this, I just want to review really quick. The amazing thing is that the same hormone that your body produces when you have a baby and you connect with that baby is the same hormone that is elicited in people when you connect with them, when you are telling them a story and it connects with that person. Now, we say these things at Wolfpack. I want to kind of give some confirmation now as a person who is actually in the legislature and is the person who is a legislator listening to these committee testimonies, listening to that, you know, during the public hearings, right? Because now I get to see it from the other side. And I want to tell you one quick thing, right? We are very, very close. So we're 50-50, right? Our committee has 20 people and there's 10 and 10. It's everything. The whole house is within one, you know what I mean? Everything is very, very close. So we have to do a lot of working together. We're an executive committee and executive session. And this is when we vote, right? We've had the public hearings. Now we're scheduling the time that we as the committee are going to vote on a recommendation, you know, different in different legislatures. But this is what it is. And we're having this conversation and each legislator is, you know, we contribute, hey, this is where I'm coming from. Maybe this is why I'm going to vote. Hey, is there something that, you know, I just want to clarify this, you know, in advance. And, you know, we're a bunch of legislators. So we like to talk. So there's a lot of conversation. And my friend, Representative Selig, this is a vote that is on immigration checkpoints. I was actually a co-sponsor of this bill, to notify about immigration checkpoints, because the Border Patrol will come and set up immigration checkpoints. They have jurisdiction over 100 miles from the border, and that is basically all of New Hampshire. So they could just set up a checkpoint whenever they want on the highway. Tourists coming, great, wonderful time to stop everybody for hours and hours and hassle people and never catch people for actual illegal border crossings, but catch them for cannabis or things like this. So we're talking about this bill. And, you know, this sounds like a pretty lib thing, right? It sounds like a pretty lib thing. We're going to get okay, the you know, the Dems are going to vote for it and the Republicans are not. Well, that was what it was looking like it was going to end up being, right? Now, my friend, Representative Selig, God bless her, she tells this story. She says, you know, I just wanted to talk about this as well. We're having our legislative conversation. She says, you know, I was thinking about it. And, you know, I'm an American citizen, but my dad was a diplomat overseas in India when I was born. So I was born in another country. So I'm an American citizen. He was doing work for the American government. That's what he was doing there. But yet I am a person who needs to carry my passport and all that. So I got stopped in one of these immigration checkpoints, and you would never know to carry around your passport with you. But here's this person who gets held up for hours and hours and hours. I mean, fortunately, she didn't have a little nug in her, her console or something like that, but hours and hours of being, held up. The chair of the committee, Rep Roy, says, you know what? He says, actually, I'm thinking about it. I was overseas. I was in the service, and my son was born over in Germany because that's where I was stationed at the time. So if my son were to get held up in one of these checkpoints, if he didn't have his passport, then he would be in that same situation as Representative Sully introduced. Just this telling a story about a human moment. And she would have no idea that his son was born over in Germany. She would have no idea that this was actually going to connect to the chair of the committee. And then he said, when somebody's got their mandate, this is how we're going to vote, but, he says, vote your conscience. I think I'm going to vote for this bill. And we ended up passing it 14-6, 16-4, actually, I think, with a recommendation to pass. It passed the House, passed the Senate. It is now law. I feel like it's a really good example of what sharing your unique human experience, the difference that it can make in these kind of decisions and things like that. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I thought it was really
cool. That's fantastic, honestly. And the only thing I will say here to anybody listening to this is really focus on the personal, right? Because there have been a million times when trying to help volunteers with committee hearings, and we say, hey, really hammer home the personal. Like, talk about anything, like your generations, like honestly, how Kimmie opened up about being from farms and like her whole history in Kentucky. That's bread and butter to legislators in Kentucky. I'm sure that's why she's so good at saying it, honestly, besides being awesome. But this isn't a critique. This is a push, honestly, because I think most people hate talking about themselves. And that's understandable, right? But really try to think about what matters to you in your community, even memories growing up at schools. You'd be amazed on how any of these little things make a huge, huge difference. Being able just to connect with people and stuff. I remember learning from Allison when we used to do like lobby training, pick up like body cues and like cues in the office. I still use that stuff, man. It totally works. In Nebraska once, the chair of the committee, we made this huge connection because he's a Republican. And he had JFK on his wall. And I'm a huge JFK guy. I even had JFK socks with me. So I was like, ooh, next time I see him, I'm wearing those bad boys. But we totally bonded. We didn't even talk about anything, Wolfpack, nothing. The minute he sat down, I was like, I have to ask you, sir. Huge JFK fan. So I knew anything he threw at me, I could answer. I've seen a bazillion documentaries, read books, like Bobby and JFK. So we wound up talking for like 45 minutes. And he's no longer the chair, which is unfortunate. But he still is in the building in other roles. And to this day, there was even a year gap where I didn't go to Nebraska, and I went the following year and I saw him. He was like, hey, Josh, how's the Wolfpack stuff going? Like, to this day, a year gap, still knows me. Like, he has gotten me meetings. Like, I've gone in his office and be like, hey, would you be able to get me a meeting with this Republican? He's like kind of dodging me. Has helped there for sure. So yeah, I will reaffirm that for sure. I have a million. I'll do one more. Pennsylvania. We were sitting in an office and the legislative aide was cold as ice, like wouldn't open up to us at all. He was like, who are these guys? Right. And he had a what do they call those big like aluminum jugs? A tumbler? Is that what they're called? Where they put all the stickers on them and stuff. So he had like one of those big water aluminum things with all the stickers on it, right? And I noticed a brewery. And I'm with Mike, our former director, who was like a huge IPA snob and like loves breweries and like that's his life, So I just asked him, I'm saying, hey, we're not really from the area. I see you have that sticker on your container. My buddy here is a huge IPA snob. Like, I'm sure you guys could start kicking it off talking about this for like 20 minutes. Is that the place we should go to grab beers afterwards? The whole entire meeting changed. Like, we talked about that for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden he was like, all right, what can I do to help you guys? Like, it was almost like we restarted the meeting. And then we got the meeting with the chair that we needed. Like, yeah, so I don't mean to drag it out too much, but this is all an emphasis on your own internal power, right? And if anything we can do here is like, can't really unlock it. You have to do that yourself. You have to be willing to unlock it. But whatever we can do to try to charge you up and help you get after it quicker with like resources from committee hearings and things that Kimmie and Jodi have mentioned, we will do our best. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Jodi. That was awesome. Kimmie, it sounded like you wanted to jump in. I kept seeing you like.
Sorry, I'm sitting in this chair and it's like squeaky, so
Oh, no,
I'm
no, you're good.
trying to like
Oh,
be
position.
comfortable. Yeah.
Okay.
No, so I think we were talking about like fun wins and things like that. And I guess I'll just add my win. We haven't actually won yet, but it's getting there and it's really close. So I'll just say how I realized also the game of the Kentucky legislature and how people play it there, because so Kentucky, I don't know if everyone in here is familiar with the Kentucky legislature, but we have a Democrat governor, but a super, 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 super majority Republican legislature. And I'm talking like not even a fourth of the legislature is Democrats. Okay. Like it is very minuscule. It's hilarious. Like, and we all know each other. And that's the thing, is like, I know those legislators, but like they hold no power. No offense to them. They're great and I love them and they support all the work that we do. And they always vote yes for us. And, and we have those relationships, but unfortunately they just don't hold any power in our legislature. But so with my bill that I'm currently working on, my win would be so it was House Bill 384 this past session. And what it is, we want to create a fund that would allow nonprofits to leverage money in the fund for matching grants, for matching federal grants, for feeding programs that would help directly impacted people and farmers. So we run programs like Kentucky Double Dollars, which is if you're on SNAP, WIC, or a senior, you can double your money at your local farmers market. And so you spend $12, you get an extra $12 to spend. And so my organization runs that. If we pass this bill, it's $1 million program. So that means my organization has to somehow find a matching $1-for-$1 million for this USDA program. That's virtually impossible for many, many nonprofits and many organizations to be able to run these programs. So our idea is to have this fund. The state puts money into it, and then we are able to leverage those funds for those federal dollars and those federal grants to make sure it's going to local farmers and to make sure that it's feeding people who need the food and who need access to healthy food as well. And so it's really hard, you would think, you don't really go to there and say, hey, you have to approach it more of like you're helping the farmer, because then you're like, I don't really necessarily talk about SNAP a lot in my conversations with Republicans, unfortunately. It's more about the economic impact these programs have. That Kentucky Double Dollars program I just mentioned, it's return on investment that the University of Kentucky did a study on the program, and it was 8-to-1, $8-to-1. So the return on investment was absolutely insane for this program. And that is what Republicans care about and want to hear. And we had farmers taking home $30,000, hiring extra help after participating in these feeding programs. So it was basically a no-brainer. You have to create this fund, because otherwise, right now we're only in 70 markets. Imagine if we're in 120 markets by next year, and we're only in 5 retail stores. Imagine if we're in an IGA in every county in Kentucky. How much economic impact that could be just by creating this fund to leverage these federal dollars. So I got a sponsor. He's really great. He's just an old head. He's been in the legislature for literally years and years, and so he holds a lot of power. He's not necessarily leadership, but he's just been there and everybody respects him. So we've been working on it for 2 years. We didn't get it introduced. This last session, we got it introduced literally the day before the deadline. And then we got voted unanimously yes out of committee. And then we got 2 readings on the House floor. And then unfortunately, the session ended and we ran out of time. So we did not get the extra vote that we needed to pass. But we're already pre-filed for this session. So everything looks great and ready to go. So, yeah, we're really hoping that, we can pass this and leverage some federal money to come down to our state that we can utilize and put back into our economy here. Because, Kentucky is really suffering here, health-wise, and poverty-wise, and these local programs that these organizations are running are really making actual impact locally. So yeah, that is my win. We didn't get there, but it was great. Josh, Jodi, you all know, and maybe other people do too. Like when you get yes, yes, yay, 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 yay through committee, and then it's gavelled, and you're like, oh my God. Because that's your next step, but then it's on to the next. But
sure.
It's just, yeah, that was great. And but talking to those people, talking about connections on that ag committee, I have only talked to maybe 4 of those people on there, and one of them was the chair, and he whipped everybody. So he told everybody to vote yes, and they did. So awesome. It's also who you know and the relationships that you've built.
I feel like everything, like I'm sure we all do, happens really slow. How often, how long does it take you to get something like that done? To build the support for it, Kimmie?
What was that? I'm sorry.
How long do you feel like it normally takes to build up the support needed to get legislation passed, or do you feel like you can't? It just takes forever.
No, so I think I might have mentioned this to you, but I learned this from Wolfpack, and I got my training. I started out at Wolfpack. I did not actually mention this in the beginning, but I started volunteering and getting active in politics mainly through Wolfpack, and I started here in Kentucky. There was nobody here. My other person who guided me was from PA, and we schemed for a long time, and I eventually built a great group of team members here in Kentucky, and we started building relationships here, and yeah, that's where I got my organizing groundwork. But I learned that it takes on average 3 legislative sessions to get something passed, and that is so true for me, at least right now. This upcoming will be my 3rd session. I'm already pre-filed. I already have the votes. I have the committee whipped already. I know, but that was because last year it was a lot of educating. It was a lot of talking with legislators. I was at the Capitol every single day. I had 40 plus meetings. I was having 3-4 meetings a day. I was just running around. I was attending all the committees because I wanted to make sure, because I want them to see my face, and then they run into me and then they just know who I am because I'm always there, and then they make jokes that I'm always there, and it's just you get to know them, and
then you find the sweet spots of the building.
Yes, we always hang out in the library. In our Kentucky legislature, we do have a lobbyist room we are able to access that has refreshments and a sitting area, but I do not sit in there. I do not know who sits in there. Actually, I don't know where it is in the Capitol, and me and a fellow lobbyist asked someone, and they literally just walked past us like they didn't hear us. We're like, do you know where the lobbyist room is? And they were just like like where they weren't allowed to tell us, and we were like, is this a secret society? I don't understand. So but I don't hang out in there, but yeah, so doing that is
Awesome. All right, yeah, keeping into the conversation about how do you change things, Jodi, I'm gonna ask you, how did you run for office? Like, tell us your journey on getting to the point of being state rep.
Well, so I mean, I was already involved in political advocacy, issue advocacy, obviously campaign finance reform. I also advocated with Rights and Democracy in New Hampshire, which LeMay, who was on here earlier, he's a good friend of mine. And he does housing. I actually was the overdose crisis organizer for a little bit, but it was a short-term contract, and onto the house. But anyway, so I kind of like I said, I'm one of those people who just kind of steps up, right? And what do we need? Okay, cool, I'm there to do it. And so I kind of started plugging myself in just by volunteerism, by reaching out to my legislators. At first, reaching out to my legislators, my predecessor, two of my predecessors are people that I first reached out to talk about the constitutional amendment. Sat down for coffee because that's how New Hampshire is. I meet them right down the street and hang out and grab coffee with your senator and whatever. So I started getting to know people through advocacy, and I think we had kind of a little progressive takeover of the of the Cheshire County Dems and then the Keene City Dems, and so I became an at-large delegate for them. And someone, a good friend of mine, probably, I could call her my mentor, came to me and another single mom. She also lost her brother. It's just amazing, like the kind of, coincidences in that. Strong ass bitch. And she is my state representative. And she came to me the way things work in New Hampshire. You have like wards, and then you have flotarial on top of it. So she is also my legislator. I am not her legislator because she lives, outside of my district, but whatever. So it's overlapping things. So she is my legislator. She came and she asked me if, there was an at-large seat available on the Keene City Council. And City Council was really not like, it was not really my place that, I took a step back and I said, all right, well, let me think about this, and, let me see if I think I can be helpful, because I'm not going to step up for something that I don't think I can actually be useful in. Right. Like I'm not a fake it till you make it type of person. If I can do this, I'll do it. If not, I'm not going to take the position from somebody else. That's silly. Not that I thought I had any chance, but so I thought about it and I kind of, put my mind together. Okay, what would I be able to do in this role and this kind of thing or whatever. And, I thought, okay, yeah, sounds good. And I did. And I stepped in for that. Right after I put my hat in the ring for, the one available at-large position, another counselor who is no longer a counselor because he moved out of his own ward decided that, he's going to run for at-large now. So he had already been a counselor. He already had the name recognition. I'm thinking, oh, geez, there's no way. But you want to know what? At the end of the day, I got a lot of really positive feedback. I talked to so many people. I knocked on doors. I made so many friends and had so many conversations. It wasn't about me. None of it was about me. If you ever heard of deep canvassing, you go out, you go and you talk to people and you listen to what they're concerned about. And I learned so much. And it was just absolutely amazing. I got to meet people and learn so much and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, I lost by 36 votes. At the end of the day, I call that a win. And the nice thing about it, I didn't feel too bad about it. I actually felt really, really good about that, like that I just didn't get just blown out of the water. And then because I had actually gone around and I had knocked on doors and and I had, gotten myself out there, a lot more people knew me. So when Sparky, my predecessor, when he decided that he was done with his service in the legislature, he came to me and said, "Hey, Jodi, I heard you might be interested in running for my seat. I'd feel a lot better about stepping down if you did." And so that was how that came about. And I had a lot of really good support, and I just like to talk to people and knock on doors and all that kind of stuff. And so, at the end of the day, I think that's really what matters. I really pride myself on bringing the voices that we don't necessarily hear, you know, the houseless. I'm the thorn in the side of people is what I am. The houseless, the people who are directly impacted by the overdose crisis, not, you know, not the, you know, people who are heads of, you know, and, you know, I don't know shade to anybody, but at the end of the day, it's the people who are actually going through the systems, navigating these systems. These are the people who can tell you what it's like to navigate those systems. They can help you identify where the gaps and the barriers are. You know what I mean? And I think that so often we don't have that. We don't seek that out. And people, you know, especially when we're talking about stigma with the overdose crisis and in a variety of situations, it's hard to stand up. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to put yourself out there. But that's what people need to know. That's what legislators need to know when they're in there making these decisions. So anyway, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. So we got about 20 minutes. I got a couple more questions. I wanted to go to Joelle. Excuse me, I'm like losing my voice here. Yeah, let's hear a little bit about your personal experience. I know you work with Wolfpack, you work with Walk-In, but anything else from your life that you've experienced in regards to this stuff, or anything in regards to solutions?
A lot of solutions I know is changing the narrative. One of the biggest things that we have to change is the narrative, and this is kind of basically any with any topic, because right now the narrative is that, you know, anybody who's on opiates, they're junkies, you know, they're just this. They have this horrible rhetoric. And it trickles down because then people with chronic illnesses who go into the hospital are thought of as junkies and drug seekers and all this stuff. When we're like, dude, I got a medic alert bracelet. Can you just do your job? You know, and then you've got the moral crisis of what's happening actually in our hospitals with the hospital staff, the doctors, the nurses. There's been articles about how they're having a moral crisis because of the healthcare system and because they're not able to treat people. People are leaving because they can't afford it. They're afraid, or honestly, they just, you know, it's just too much. The insurance won't pay for it. You know, the constant fighting doctors have to do with that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I've noticed with my organizing is interties with both of this, is with telling the personal story and basically putting yourself out there and making that connection, was when we had the charity care, it's now called financial aid, campaign against Swedish Providence. And the one thing that we did was we put out the voices of the people with the lived experience. And I got up in front of the cameras and on TV and said that I had gone bankrupt, which at that time was the most embarrassing thing to say, because if you had gone bankrupt, that means you were an absolute failure. When in fact, when we went and did the bankruptcy, the judge was like, wow, no, this is perfect. This way you don't lose your house. You know, it's all because of these medical bills, but we have to wrap everything else into it, and it's going to affect you for the rest of your life. Oh, and your child, because you'll be banned from all these institutions, but at least you won't lose your home, and, you know, this is all great. And then you find out the next year that Swedish Providence should have just paid off my bills because I was under the poverty level. And according to state law, every hospital, for profit and nonprofit, has to give 34% charity care or financial aid. It is in the law, and they just didn't do it. Well, so then they, you know, they paid the rest of my bills and all that stuff later, but that didn't help me. You know, here we are in 2023, and my 17-year-old is still having to be at a bank and can't go to the institution he wants to go to because he's not old enough to get his own bank account without an adult parent, and until he's 18, because they can't be under a contract until legal year 18. And so but I'm banned from these institutions because of that bankruptcy. But it wasn't my fault, but it doesn't matter because on paper they don't care. And that bankruptcy meant that when I got divorced, I couldn't get into the housing by my child because they're like, oh, well, you've been bankrupt. It doesn't matter what's in your bank. You've been bankrupt. You can't live here. We don't trust you. All of this, the housing, all because of honestly, their greed. They make so much money off of me. I mean, the pharmaceutical company alone, they get $16,000 or $22,000 every 6 months. Like, I mean, it's these things, and then they wonder, and so one of the big things that we did was we put these stories out there. We had the people coming. We sat down with the legislators. We do have legislative coffees here too. So I'm actually excited they're about to start. Jodi, so I always love to hear about those. Ours are like 15 minutes, but whatever. But one of the things that we do is we talk about these things. Washington Can works on 3 basic things. We work on healthcare, we work on racial justice aspects, and we work on something else that I can't remember right now, which Anita's going to throw in the chat because my brain's spacing at the moment. I have an innumerable amount of lesions in my brain. It's fine. So you get somebody with MS, sometimes with good stuff. But this is also the thing is that, we aren't even, we look at our healthcare system and what they see is they see all of us as the bottom line. All we are is their stuff is a product and they're selling it to us. So they want us to be sick in a sense, because otherwise they don't make money. And so that's why they make things more difficult. And that's why you don't have people going to your regular doctors. And even now, my regular doctor who doesn't take Medicare is now not going to take AppleCare, which is the ACA healthcare. Like, she's just going full privatized. And I don't blame her. She's a wonderful doctor, but now I have to pay out of pocket. And it's because she's not getting any money, but it's also because what did they just do under Trump and then Biden streamlined it? They privatized part of Medicare. So don't get Medicare Advantage, no matter how much they say it's so much better for you. It's actually the privatized part of Medicare. So like, we don't even have that anymore. And that's our money that we've been putting in our whole life, but they're privatizing everything because just like, we talked about, so it's getting out these stories. It's talking to all these people. It's making the connections. It's constantly talking. I am never not talking about stuff. I'm constantly talking about, and then when people say they're not going to vote, and I say, I get it. I get it that you feel like your vote doesn't count, but wouldn't you like it to? I said, if we really want our votes to count, we have to get this money out, because any issue that we want, and just like you said, when Kimmie, you're talking to certain people, you do it this way. You don't talk about SNAP with the Republicans, because that's all they see is Black people. All they see is the racism and the white supremacy and those people. But you talk about the economy and stuff. Pramila Jayapal does that. She will constantly not put her name on something, but if it gets the bill done, she doesn't care if a Republican takes credit. She's like, doesn't matter. That's the thing we have to do. It shouldn't matter. It's not about who's doing it, but we got to bring in the people with the lived experience, because without their voices, and not only do they need to be there for the committee hearings and the stuff, they need to be there when the bills are being drafted. They need to be the ones, because they're the ones that are going to get affected. Because what do? Where did the DAPL pipeline? Was it going to go in the white neighborhood? No. We have to go in the native land, because it can't go in the white neighborhood. That's not, the rich neighborhood. So it's the same thing. Well, how did they get that? Well, they pay for their politicians. So it's all this huge intersectionality, and it's destroying everyone. It's even destroying them up at the top, because a lot of them are getting caught up in the opioid crisis too, because it, in a sense, isn't, some people, it's not the class part, because if you get something laced with fentanyl, it doesn't matter how much money you make. And, and so this is one of the things that we really, really need to just, I think that we really need to look at all the intersectionality of every single issue. And if we're not bringing in the people who are not only the most affected by the problem, but will also be most impacted by the so-called solution, then really you're not doing anything for those people. You're just using their story to get what you want. And that's one of the biggest things that I've seen with a lot of our stuff that we've been able to get through with criminal justice reform, with housing and rental rights that we've gotten, is bringing in those things, like telling people about why having to pay first, last, and deposit is a safety issue when you're dealing with domestic violence. You know, they don't know these things. You know, it's bringing in these stories. So, and getting your own story. It took a while to get my story crafted. Now I can say it like there's no tomorrow. I was diagnosed with MS when I was 16. I was the youngest in what, I mean, like, I've said it so many times. In fact, we're doing a big thing on it because there's a whole, you know, line of it. And knowing where your story will impact that particular senator or representative most is going to help. And yes, there are great lobbyists out there, and we do need the good ones. So, because they gotta help us out too. You know, you fight fire with fire sometimes. So
For sure. Yeah, speaking to the like talking to different people throughout the country, like I want to emphasize it isn't fake, right? Like when you think about those who are corrupting the system, they hire literal think tanks to do like conversations with Americans, to do like polling on word choice and how they label their bills, how they word their bills. Like they're doing all of that stuff, right? So it's not being fake, it's being genuine. If you really want to connect with people, you have to try to like walk in their shoes, understand how they talk, how they think about things. And it goes back to what Jodi said. At that point, when you're already thinking that way, it's not about you. You're thinking about the person that you're trying to speak with, and not in the goal of making an argument, but making an ally. And it's not easy to do. And there will be situations where you have to walk away, right? Like not everybody's movable. We have bad people. Like that's the world we live in. Not everybody's great. Not everybody's good, but it would be hard to convince me that we don't have 65, 75% of Americans who are decent human beings, who would want to work with us and work together to save this country from the corrupting influence of big money in our politics. Like, I don't think you could ever convince me otherwise of that. Are we going to be able to do it? Big question mark, right? Do I think it's doable? Absolutely. But yeah, we have a lot of work to actually make it happen, for sure. And the only reason why I'm even somewhat pessimistic is I think we all should really harbor in the idea of just urgency. Like I don't know how much time we have. It's hard to gauge, you know. Like we obviously have things battling against us when it comes to climate change and other issues that are pretty pressing, but it's pretty hard to gauge like what year is it going to be like too far away for us to get money out of politics. The system's like too corrupted. It feels like that sometimes, if I'm being honest with you. But what gives me hope is these conversations, because at the end of the day, what really changes the tide is if there was an organized mass bodies of individuals in America who are willing to use their voice and willing to use their vote to change shit. And we just got to get through this WWE of politics today, the Yankees versus Red Sox of politics, where like literally nothing gets done. And then all they're doing is like, oh, the Yankees are such a bad team. Look at them. Like, give us money. And then the other side does the same damn thing. And then literally nothing changes. And then we even have people who run on changing thing and they get elected because people are desperate for change. And still nothing happens. You have literally Obama running on change. You had Trump draining the swamp. And, you know, I love my Republican brothers and sisters, but I will argue with you. This will be maybe the one argument I will get in with you with is, yeah, he didn't do anything to drain the swamp, in my opinion. So I think the swamp is very well probably the worst it's ever been, especially with a lot of these lobbyists. And we'll get to that question in a minute for sure, being in like key positions and in cabinet positions and yeah, so on and so forth. So yeah, I really appreciate this conversation. I know it's not easy, but these are the kind of things we have to get at, so that the bad guys can stop rewiring people to get us to fight one another. Because as corny as it may sound, I've been saying this tagline quite a bit. I really just believe when we cut through all the BS and we talk with each other, like this is what they don't want to have happen, because it's pretty easy to find common ground. And then as soon as you start finding common ground, you very quickly identify a common enemy. And I think that's the fundamental reason why they're like, bloop, fight, because of that specific, because it is that easy. Like you can believe in a bazillion conspiracy theories, but I think the grandest conspiracy is happening right in front of us. which is our entire government is literally being bought. It's legalized bribery. It's courtesy of the Supreme Courts. So a lot of work. Excited. We can get to some questions, but before we do the three of you want anything you wanted to add before we wrap up and get to any questions? And if you have questions listening, please put them in the chat so I can make sure to get to them. Any closing words? Any plugs?
I just want to say I personally don't think it's a good versus bad thing. I think it's an information versus lack of information, because I think that the majority of the people that don't really understand the level of the corruption and how deep and far it goes would be more on board if they understood that. But they just are like, oh yeah, you go into politics to make money. That's, of course it's that way. Oh, you have to have a lot of money to go into politics. And they just kind of have that, well, or this is the way it's always been. This is the way it's always been. And so they're kind of sitting on the sidelines. Or there's people that don't want to talk, or I don't get involved into politics. And I'm like, well, politics is life. You eat, well, look at the way your food is. Oh, you live in a food desert. That's not a food desert. Deserts are actually created, by nature. This is on purpose. This is because they did it that way, because that particular grocery store didn't think you'd make money. It's those kind of things, which that hurts the farmers in those areas when they have those kind of food deserts and stuff like that. And we get back to that intersectionality. Kimmie's over like, food deserts, hello, farmer stuff. It all rounds about. And so people need to understand that they may hate politics, but politics is life, and they need to understand that we're not here because we want to bug them about politics. We're here because we want to create a better space. And so it's just throwing information out there, because I even got a Trump guy to vote for Pramila Jayapal, and he invited me to his barbecue, which I was like, yeah, sure. No, he was one of my neighbors with a Blue Lives Matter sign, but I knocked on that door and did that common ground, which was we both hated, quote, welfare queens. And even though I knew he was talking the racists, I was like, oh yeah, those big rich guys that are doing the gold toilets and taking our money. And he's like, and for their third yacht. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, Pramila Giles getting them up, so we have that same thing. I think that they've just been, a lot of people in some senses, like half my family in Kansas, they have the understanding that only this side, or only that they actually have their best interest, when, as we know, they're shooting them in the foot.
Yeah, totally. When I say bad guys, my mind is always on the system of corruption, right? So for me, there's two big players in the system, right? There's the corruptors, and then there's the corrupted, right? So I think of like the corruptors, and they're all over the place. Like even in independent podcasts, people who purposely peddle misinformation knowingly for self-interest. Because you're right, I do think we're up a battle of information, but it's such a hard battle because there are literally people profiting from spreading misinformation, right? So that's when I say bad guys, right? Because they do use the emotion based, right? They do some of the organizing stuff we do, but then they flip it and they're like, no, the problem's the Democrats, or the problem's the Republicans, and we never really get to the heart of the problem because we're talking past each other. And I don't believe in coincidences. I firmly believe that's all by design. You want to have a fun night with some Wolfpack people when we do this in person and we have our after hours. We'll start getting into some other stuff, because there's some rabbit holes I could go down to for sure that just make me feel even more affirmed in this belief that I know it's not like a table of guys like coming up with this stuff, but it pretty damn close is to, honestly. Especially when you see the stuff coming out now with the Supreme Court judges going on these lavish vacations, and like it's absurd. It's all about access. You have a whole group of politicians who say we can't figure out healthcare, but meanwhile they have nothing to worry about because they have like the best healthcare in America.
A lot of our bills and stuff are tied to think tanks.
Totally.
And they spend their entire days figuring out and planning this.
They
So in a
literally
sense,
write the
it is
legislation and give it to the legislators. Like, here you go. Yeah, no, 100%. All right. Anything else, Kimmie, Jodi? You want anything you want to wrap up with?
Love y'all. That's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, Kimmie.
Yeah, just, I'm so happy to be here. We really have to fight for agriculture here and our farmers and make sure that it gets down to the nitty gritty of even the being built on racism and oppression, and how Black and Indigenous people also get pushed out of agriculture. So that's also a big thing. So just, yeah, big money in politics is very deeply rooted, and there's places that you can definitely go. Definitely start advocating, educating yourself, volunteering, participating with Wolfpack. Like there's so many things that you can do to start movements, to start change. It might feel slow and impossible, but I've been in this world now for since college, and that's been 13 years now, and I'm just now hitting the tip of the iceberg. So, it takes time and it's a slow burn sometimes, but it's worth it.
Awesome. So we will see if we have some questions. I will do just a couple of announcements and plugs just based on some of the stuff we talked about here. We've referenced organizing a bazillion times. We've referenced the training as well, but I put the link in the chat if anybody's interested. We're going to have our advanced organizing training starting on Tuesday next week. It's training that was adopted from that same 6-week course I talked about with Jane McAlevey that a lot of us have gone through multiple times. And then the amazing volunteers here have spent quite a bit of time adapting it for Wolfpack purposes. And it's condensed for sure. It's 3 2-hours versus the 6 2 hours, but still pretty meaty. And we're still figuring out some of it, honestly, like with the charting and mapping for sure. A lot of that done in union context is actually done on paper. And yeah, that was the only part of the training where I almost pulled my hair out. I was like, everything's awesome except for keeping track of everything on paper. So we're working on software and ways to do all that visually and in a way that we can use that data and harness it for our good. Because again, with the idea of urgency, time is very valuable, right? So anything that we can do to make the organizing work easier, because it's so hard, is what we're looking to do here in the next, well, we've been doing it, but for the next few months, we want to get a lot of these things up and running so we can get back to it next year. So I put the link for that if you're interested in joining the training, or if you're also interested at all, if this is still streaming and you want to join us for the remainder tomorrow, we are about a third to our goal. It's free, so don't feel obligated to donate, but it would definitely help. We're going to start raising funds specifically to hire staff, so we can have an ability to kind of shoot some adrenaline into all of this and speed up the process. And then hopefully that part-time staff will become full-time staff, and that'll be another dose in the arm. And then hopefully that full-time staff doubles in size, and then we're really cooking with gas, ladies and gentlemen, because if we're going to save America, we have to have more employees in your local gas station. Just going to keep it honest with you. Right now we got one, so we got to do better than that. So anything you can do to help, share with your friends and family. Even if you can't come to the event, grab a ticket, donate a couple of bucks. It'll definitely help for sure, and we appreciate it. All right, let's see if we have any questions. I know I saw a couple. Kimmie, I think you might have answered one already. You mentioned, maybe you did, it was David's about do farmers get paid to what was it? Is it true that farmers get paid not to grow crops?
Yeah, definitely in ways you register your farm, and then you have a registry with the USDA, but the government does not pay farmers to farm food for us unless they are part of a crop commodity program or a specialty program with the USDA. A lot of times farmers will have to enroll themselves into different grant programs or classes or things that are offered to get some sort of money outside of their other farm business to get income from the government, but no, they don't get paid for that. So
All right, we got the big one here that we all touched on a little bit, so I'm sure all want to get in on it. But it was, if we want to get money out of politics, does that have anything to do with, or would that mean eliminating lobbyists? Like, are they correlated? So we talked about this a little bit last night in regards to our resolution that we work on here at Wolfpack, and the goal of getting an amendment. We don't have any specific amendment language. Could there be things that impact lobbyists? Hell yeah, like contributions and maybe the revolving door, because that's a huge problem of, individuals working for the military and then getting huge jobs at Lockheed Martin, and same thing with pharmaceutical industries, tobacco, as we know famously, with the dude passing out checks from tobacco, and then he gets a job there when he retires Speaker of the House many years ago. So that is a very real thing. So yes, it could. It wouldn't. I would never see a scenario where they get eliminated. Because me and Kimmie kind of want to jump at this earlier. Lobbyists aren't bad. Like the first time I ever had to register, it definitely felt gross. I'm not going to lie. But it's the same thing we were talking about earlier about misinformation and talking about this stuff. When you actually learn what lobbyists do and like what their role is in the government, it's actually pretty important. And if we were to get rid of it, then folks like Kimmie and I wouldn't be able to go to state houses and lobby for legislation like this. So it's really important. The reason why it's so perverse today is because the system isn't working like it's supposed to. A lobbyist is supposed to know their shit and go talk to somebody and then convince them that this is a good idea. That doesn't happen in today's politics because they don't have to convince them. They just write a campaign donation or they hold a fundraiser for them. And that's the quid pro quo that happens in the politics today, which is why we all have a bad taste about lobbyists, because that is what the majority of these lobbyists who get paid. I've seen it. Like I've been in Nebraska where they rent out the whole entire top of the hotel and it's all free food and they invite all the legislator. I've been to them. Like I took advantage of it. Don't get me wrong. I had myself a steak. I had some cigars with some legislators. But yeah, all in the effort of rubbing elbows and being in that room and making relationships to help get our Wolfpack bill passed. And I got invited once to go play bowling with all the legislators, the Democrats. And when I went bowling, every lobbyist I saw lobbying that day was playing bowling. Like they were on teams with legislators, like they knew their name, like, go girl, like best friends. So it is very much relationship based for sure. But that access, man, getting that door open happens really easy when they know there's a check following it for sure. And that's what we're up against as the good lobbyist, is trying to convince people to maybe not take the campaign donation and focus on helping their people. But that is why the system is literally not the whole reason, but a big reason why it's fundamentally broken. Anything you guys wanted to add to that?
I just want to piggyback on that and kind of tie in something Joelle said earlier with like being a lobbyist. Joelle said, people need to hear from directly impacted people, and things like that. And that's how I see my role as a lobbyist. A lot of times I'm the liaison to for the directly impacted people to my connections with the legislators. I bring them to meetings with me. At least if for some reason I can't somehow get a farmer or directly impacted person in a legislative meeting with me, I'll go by myself. I mean, it's fine, but a lot of times you also you want to think about leadership development and those things. Like you're helping these people tell their story, they're talking to legislators, they are gaining this real life experience, and they're watching change actually happen in front of them. So you're actually creating movement with this job. And so that's what I love about my job, that I wish everybody looked at it like that, because it is truly some of the most rewarding work I've ever done in my entire life. I work with directly impacted people, and I know she would be 100% okay with me telling her story. But I work with well, she's a directly impacted mom. She has two daughters. She's on SNAP. And she recently got her GED in December, and now she's in her second semester of community college. She's like doing this shit, you know. And she started out, she lives in Section 8 housing, and she heard of our network, and our network helps people figure out technical assistance when it comes to SNAP and WIC enrollment and things like that. So she was really confused because Kentucky makes it really confusing on our website to sign up for SNAP. So she reached out and she attended one of our phone calls because they're open to the community. And she took our information back and she started organizing her housing unit and started talking to all the moms there. And then it was the building next to her. And then it was the building across the street. And now she's got all these women around ready to talk to these legislators. And she has the greatest inspiration and one-liners. She says, you know, a lot of people want to call me low income, but there's nothing low about me. And I love that saying that she says all the time. She says, we were in a meeting with a congressman back in March, and she said, you know, when I was a kid, I didn't understand what poor was. So I asked my dad, like, you know, what does being poor mean? And he said, poor is when you give up. And so like she just has all these little things that you're like, and she uses SNAP. She uses these programs. She's in Section 8 housing, but she's a college student. She has two daughters in magnet schools here. Like she works two jobs. Like she is working really hard. She's organizing her community, and all of a sudden that meeting that she heard developed a leader who I met, and I had somehow had the connection to get her into meetings with congressmen and legislators and get her voice out there, because that is what my job is supposed to be as a lobbyist, is to grow that movement and help those people's voices be heard. But yeah, directly impacted people, that's who's gonna like really change these decision makers' minds.
I might be able to make an argument there's not enough lobbyists. How about that for a hot take, huh? Huh? I mean, there's plenty of lobbyists, but I can make an argument there's not enough in the right area, you know? We need more lobbyists advocating for policies that Americans want versus private companies, you know? But
Yes.
it's not a lot of money in that other one, unfortunately, because lobbyists do.
I just want to throw one thing in,
Yeah,
which
please
is
do. We've got plenty of time.
a little bit off topic, but not quite. If we had universal health care, unions wouldn't have to have that as something that they're working with their negotiations, so they could just have the better protections and the pay raise. We'd all get paid better because our companies wouldn't have to pay into our particular part of the medical. You wouldn't lose your health insurance if you get divorced. You wouldn't lose your health insurance if you lose your job. You wouldn't lose your health insurance on the operating table while you're having your heart attack, like my friend did, because he lost his job while he was on the operating table, almost dying of a heart attack. But, healthcare being tied to our spouses or our employees and stuff like this, it's this stuff that, and we've already seen, even the Koch brothers did the study, and it showed that if we do universal healthcare, we will save money. Like the Koch brothers did that, and they were against universal healthcare they were trying to bias that as much as possible. So the fact that even their study showed that universal healthcare is we'd spend less money than we do now. But these things are tied, and also with that, then every farmer's got health care. Then every person has health care. That means those people who, you're the person you're talking about who's on SNAP, she doesn't have to worry about health care. She at least knows that she can go to her doctor just like that. And, every other country, the fact that they are warned, get health insurance if you're going to the States, because you will go bankrupt if you get sick there. Like, I get sick in another country, I'm fine. There's nothing. I don't pay anything. Nothing. I walk in, they treat me, I walk out. Kind of like down in Oregon, you don't pay tax, because the sales tax, because they don't have one. I mean, that's just their choice in there, but that's because all the citizens pay. So yeah, it's a benefit when I happen to go, across that border. But even all the rich people are saying they go out of the country to get a lot of their health care. They fly out because it's cheaper. So these are the things that, all of this. And if we're, the only reason that they're keeping it is because it's making them money. And it shouldn't, but it's destroying our world. I mean, look at how many people are dying every year because of our healthcare. And that's not, and on top of that, how many people are dying from the opioid crisis.
Bankruptcies.
And it's because everything, making a choice, having to, ration your insulin with 2 other people in your family. I mean, this is, and they're, upset, they're raising the prices. And we just had, Eli Lilly, who had all their stocks tank because they just said that they were going to make their insulin for free, but it was that person that got a Twitter account because of that big thing over on Twitter. And so everybody got all excited because Eli was going to do insulin for free, and it was all excited, and their stocks tanked because everybody's like, no, we won't make money, and now Elon Musk is getting in trouble because of that. But there's, there's a whole bunch of, like, the fact that, that's something that could really help save lives. People are like, no, I would rather people die than pay $1 into taxes. I'm like, yeah, but you pay 300 into taxes that goes into that corporation's pocket because they get their corporate taxes are so low. Their business taxes, the income tax. We don't even have income tax here we have the most regressive taxes here in Washington. And, we're constantly fighting for healthcare and getting things taken back. So it really is, it's getting and talking to those people. It's the lobbyists can be very good if they're, if they are talking to the people with the lived experience, because that's the point. So for those who are, it really makes the big difference. As an organizer, you have to kind of bring that about, because you can't, you have to have your own story. But if I don't have all these other people's stories, then it's not enough to just bring that.
Yeah. And I know, like, the goal here was to try to get into some of the weeds, but as you can tell, this conversation, like, there's so many avenues to go down that could take so many long conversations. Because even as you're saying that, we didn't even dabble at all talking about, like, R&D and, like, how American funds, like, almost all of that, and then they make bazillions of dollars off of things that we funded, and it's like this never-ending vision. It's why it's so infuriating with the whole argument of, like, there's not enough money. Like, I totally hear you. We should be physically responsible. We shouldn't just, like, throw it around like it means nothing. But that's what we're somewhat doing now. Like, our systems are super inefficient. They cost us more money as Americans to, like, deal with it all. Like, to this day, I still don't quite understand why I need to file my taxes every year. Like, just take what you need and, like, leave me alone, like, I don't want to, like, I don't even care if I don't get anything back. Just take what you need and, like, that's it, but that's all propped up by the H&R Block lobbyist industry. And, they were fighting recently because they were talking about making it free through the IRS to file for, like, single, and they, like, the H&R Block's like, no, like, got to stop that. Like, and that's all it is. There's always a middleman trying to make money.
Exactly. As a child of someone who was in the IRS for my entire childhood and life, they get so much pushback and stuff from the rich and the laws that they get pushed on them so that they can't do it. That's why the money that the Democrats had given them, it was basically funding the people that were retiring and for those new hires. So funding the retirement pension and the new hirees to replace the people that are in. And what are the Republicans doing? They want to cut it because even IRS people go, yeah, the reason we go after the little guy is because we can afford to go after the little guy. We don't have the money to go after the big ones. And because the big ones are in the office and they're the ones that give us the money to do our job. And so that's, you see with the appropriations bills. And so they're the ones that are saying, oh, well, we'll give the IRS money. But then what do? They turn all of us against the IRS and be like, ooh, taxes are bad. But way back in the day when taxes were super high and corporate taxes were high and income tax was high. And how are we all doing? We were doing great. But see, they don't want that. And that's where it's become for the biggest thing is it's not that they just want, the money and stuff. They want the power. And they've lost sight with that power.
I have a really close friend of mine. I hope he's not watching. I won't say his name, but he works in insurance, like kind of like the whole brokering of selling health insurance. And he was telling me like how much money is involved in like agents and how like lucrative it is. And, we got into talking about it. And even though he like it's his career and he makes good money, he talked about how it's such a waste of money and like it could be so much better if it was more streamlined and there weren't like a million healthcare providers and there wasn't all these middlemen grabbing at the pot, whether it's the hospitals or the insurance companies or the brokers or the company that hire the brokers, like everybody's getting a slice of the pie. And as a result, that's why the pie is so damn expensive. And I just said to him, hey, I'm glad you're doing good in this world, but just know I'm coming for you. Cause like, yeah, I'm coming for you. Like, like
people in insurance will get jobs working for the government for universal health care. They'll be the ones that'll have the codes. They'll get retrained. That's what I always kind of say. There's going to have to be people that do that. So
yeah, it doesn't go away like the need to oversee a healthcare industry. Like you still have to do all of that, the billing, the coding, like all that still exists. You're just cutting out the middleman, therefore cutting out significant amount of costs. All right, perfect. We only got 8 minutes. I don't see any other questions. Does anybody have anything in the chat or anybody here on the panel if they want to add before we wrap up?
I just wanted to say that as a homeless advocate, I would really appreciate it if we could make my job obsolete.
Amen.
The argument that you should not, you know what I mean?
That's where you are right now, right?
Improve the conditions for other people because, people who are in that service, I'm here because I'm needed. I would like not to be needed. I can put my energy somewhere else. It's just a ridiculous argument, in my opinion. But anyway.
We don't want to have to do it. I don't want to do mutually.
I can show solidarity there with you, Jodi, for sure. Maybe we can throw Kimmie in there. I feel like we would all be working to end our jobs, right? Because if we did it right, there's really not a need for it anymore, right? So, I mean, maybe one day we'll talk about the nonprofit industrial complex because that's an interesting conversation too. So, not today. We'll save it. We'll save it. But yeah, I think many of us would like to work to not have to work.
Yes, food should be right also. So everybody should be able to eat.
There should be no difference between organic and other food. Everything should just be organic. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. What's the alternative organic? Fake? Like, then it's not real. Like, I don't know. It just blows my mind how expensive organic food is. And it just blows my mind that organic isn't like the standard. Like, so, yeah.
And that's the other thing with money in politics, crop insurance. It is so hard to get crop insurance for organic crops. It is very complicated. And becoming a certified organic farmer is also one of the most complicated processes with the USDA. So, yeah.
Of course, they want to make it harder.
Someone said
because they already got the other ones, the agricultural, the manufacturers, they've got them all down, that stuff. And so they want to keep that big agro giving them the checks.
Yeah, someone said I got triggered by that response. Hell yeah, I got triggered. Want to see my grocery bill? Like that shit's tripled.
I
Like
live with 6
it's like
people.
$7 for a gallon of organic milk. That's a fact. I'm not even exaggerating. Like it's like $4.50, $5 for organic eggs. Like it's crazy. And why? Just because it's raised the way it probably should have been and not with chemicals. So I have to pay extra money not to eat poison. Think about that. I have to pay
You're
extra
preaching
money
to a preacher.
not to
I
eat
have to
poison.
import. We import our flour so that I can eat it here.
Yeah,
So I
it's
can have
crazy.
bread.
Just absurd.
Everything I eat is so much more expensive than anybody in the house. And I live with 5 other people just because I can't eat all of the other stuff. But, they always say, oh, it's super cheap to eat healthy. I don't know why people have such a problem.
We had a question in the chat from Nicole. I think I can answer it pretty quick. It was, would you ever be teaming up with Justice Democrats as a possibility as they advocate for candidates to take corporate PAC money or dark money donations? So in the very, 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 very beginning of Justice Democrat, when Cenk first founded the group, when they had their platform page and they launched, every single candidate actually supported Wolfpack and Article 5 conventions to get money out of politics. That was like one of the things Cenk had all the candidates to agree to. And that got removed from their slate relatively quickly. And they don't really have a ton of money in politics stuff on the website, if I'm being totally blunt. But the biggest thing is like they're strictly partisan. Like I know a lot of the issues they hit on, like we do, aren't. But yeah, once you associate yourself with a completely partisan group, then you're a partisan group. If there was an equivalent to that, we would totally work with just Democrats and like a Republican equivalent. There's also a possibility, like absolutely nothing set in stone. But some of the feedback we got, if you were with us last night, we kind of went through a whole journey of Wolfpack. And one of it was during the pandemic when we did like a big debrief and spoke with every leader and compiled a list of, issues and pain points. There were many leaders within the organization that suggested that Wolfpack also get involved in elections. It's actually something we never talked about as an organization. But I could totally see down the road being something that would have to be talked about as like a decision internally, bottom up, if that's something that we would do. Personally, I think it would make sense. I think it was Brandon earlier mentioned the KC tenants, and I actually reached out to them. I talked to them about Jodi too. I saw them in a video on YouTube and was blown away with the idea of like a renters union and organizing renters. Like that's awesome. And that's how they were able to get those things that Brandon was talking about passed in that state. And one of the things I saw in the video was how they talked about how they grew their power. They were able to get some things done, but they still felt like they lacked legislative power, even with the people behind them. They still weren't able to get their bills and laws passed as quickly as they thought they should with the amount of people they had. And now they are beginning to have candidates run under their platform that they support. And of course, when they get elected, they're seeing their policies get enacted quicker. So, yeah, not saying it's anything that we do. That's just my own personal thing. But stay tuned. Down the road, it might be something that we absolutely do to make sure we're tackling this issue and giving us our best chance of winning, if we're just being honest. I hope that answered your question. I wasn't trying to dodge it, but we do have to really maintain being nonpartisan while also working with everybody like Justice Democrats. So it's a tough road to navigate, but something we're always very mindful of. All right, I think that's it. We got a minute, so nailed it, I guess. This was awesome, though, seriously. You guys know I've been looking forward to this for a while, so I really appreciate every single one of you. Y'all are awesome. I will say this as a man, we need more women in leadership. My personal experience, men hate me all you want. Men are way better at this stuff than us. Y'all are awesome. I think men sometimes it's the ego thing, and maybe not sometimes, maybe all the time, for being totally honest. I think it just has a lot to do with organizing work. It involves an empathy and like checking your ego. And from my experience, especially with my friends, because I'm like the biggest cornball teddy bear of them all, and I get made fun of all the time for crying and being emotional and all that stuff. And I'm just like, whatever, bro. Like, you think that's a weakness? To me, that's my superpower, homie. So you can make fun of it all you want, because at the end of the day, yeah, people who really struggle And the reason why we're pointing the fingers and yelling a lot of the time, it's as corny as a bumper sticker as it may be, is hurt people hurt people. And being an organizer and understanding that, like, there's a lot of hurt in this world. And if you can go into your meetings and your conversations with that kind of understanding, you can start cutting through some of this crap, because society in some ways molds people to think bad things and fight with one another. So we have a lot up against us to be able to cut through all that and make relationships and get this done. So yeah, I encourage y'all to check out our training next week. That stuff definitely helps, but conversations like this too, honestly, definitely make a huge difference, especially with us all trying to be vulnerable and talk about these things as much as we can in an emotional way. So I appreciate the hell out of every single one of you. And yeah, we're going to take a dinner break and then pretty much done for the night. But if anybody's interested, we're going to be hanging out in Discord tonight. I think Steve G is going to be hosting a room where we'll probably play some games and stuff. I believe if Mondo's available, he had a flood in his basement, unfortunately, which totally sucks, because I had that too with pipes. That's like the most annoying thing in the world when you own a home. So he might be able to join me tonight, but we're probably going to play some games and see if we can stream it into Discord. We haven't done that before, but me and Mondo play video games quite often. So we're thinking about streaming into Discord. And what would be cool there is like folks can literally join our chat while we're playing and like talk to us, talk junk to us, whatever you want, and then see the game at the same time. And then if there's enough people, we will host like a little room where we can all kind of play the same thing together. So we'll be doing that tonight in Discord. Let me get y'all the link. I'm just going to say it out loud. It's wolf-pack.com/Discord. Just make sure it's a lowercase d. It is case sensitive. And that will get you into our Discord server. And then at the very top of the Discord server, you will notice there is a Wolfpack Workshop section. And there are voice channels in there. One's a Hangout, and I believe the other one is game streaming. The Hangout will be with Steve, and the game streaming will be myself.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh, and Kimmie and Jodi. It was great being on this panel with you, and I got a lot of great information, and it's always nice to see other people all around doing the same thing, and then hearing about stuff because I read a lot, because that's like my big thing. I dive into it all. So listening about Kentucky and stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know. Yeah, or where, all the different stuff. So it's good to hear, and I appreciate all of you. And thank you, Josh.
Absolutely. You're absolutely welcome. It feels weird saying thank you and welcome. I feel like that's been like beaten out of me with organizing training. So it's like, you're welcome, but like it still feels weird. I don't know. I have to get over it. I'll get over it at some point.